Just recently, the Eagles made clearly their most important move of the offseason by signing Jalen Hurts to a long-term contract that makes him the highest paid player in NFL history, and now that that's taken care of, the Eagles can fully shift their focus to other things, and with the NFL draft coming up in just over a week, the Eagles could look to address some of their weaker positions on their roster. But the draft may not be the Eagles' only way of doing this, as of late, there have been multiple star players that seem like they could be on the move at some point soon this offseason, and the Eagles are definitely a team that could have interest in any one of these guys. But would these players be a good fit for the Eagles, and how realistic is it to assume that the Eagles could go out and make a move for one of them? Well, we're going to talk all about that in this video today, but before we do that, make sure you go down and subscribe to this channel for more consistent Philadelphia Eagles content coming throughout this entire offseason. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a like on this video if you do enjoy. Now, with all that being said, let's get into this video. The Philadelphia Eagles have been a team that have gone out in recent offseasons and made moves to acquire star players, whether that be through free agency or through a trade. Just last offseason, they acquired multiple star players. They got Hassan Reddick through free agency. Obviously, they made the trade for A.J. Brown on draft night. They got James Bradberry a little bit later into free agency, and then they also made a trade for C.J. Gardner-Johnson just before the NFL season started. So obviously, last offseason was an offseason where they made a lot of these big splash-type moves, but this offseason, they haven't really done it as much because they're just simply in a different situation than last offseason. They had to extend Jalen Hurts to a big contract, and they just didn't have as much money to work with this offseason as they did last offseason. And I think a lot of their focus this offseason was to retain a lot of the talent that they already had on their roster that was in danger of leaving. So it does make a lot of sense that so far this offseason, they haven't gone out and made many huge moves. But now that the Jalen Hurts contract is done, I think it's seeming a little bit more likely that the Eagles could go out and make a move to acquire another star player, because now they have more clarity on what their cap situation looks like, not just for this year, but years moving into the future, and they can now shift their focus to building out the rest of the roster. Now, I know what people are going to say. They're going to say, well, the Eagles just paid Jalen Hurts big money, so they're not going to have any cap space to go out and acquire any of these other big-name star players because they're going to be too much money for the Eagles to afford. And what I say to that is that's simply not true when you look at the way the Eagles structured the contract, because the contract is not very heavy in fully guaranteed money, and the Eagles found a way to structure this contract to where the cap hits, at least over the next 4 seasons, are not too bad. They're ranked 25th, 19th, 19th, and 10th in each season respectively amongst quarterbacks. So this notion that the Eagles aren't going to be able to go out and add other players to their roster is just simply not true. And the Eagles also went out and made another move recently to get more cap space in the future, because they restructured Jordan Mailata's contract just yesterday, which doesn't really clear up that much cap space for this season, but it clears up a lot of cap space for the 2024 and 2025 NFL seasons respectively. So long story short, the Eagles are going to have cap flexibility moving forward. So I think it's even more likely now than just a couple days ago that the Eagles could go out and make a move to get a star player. Obviously, we know the Eagles are always in on any star player that's available because of Howie Roseman's philosophy.
I think part of what you have, and I think I have, is there's an insecurity that you're not going to be great. And I'm so worried that someone's going to be available that I don't know about, and I see a trade or a move made and I didn't know about it,
and you could have had it.
I would have done it.
Yeah.
And so for me, that drives me. So what do you try to do? You just the information part of this is talking to these guys, these GMs, and just I'm open to anything,
Yeah.
We're looking for these positions, but I'm open to anything. And honestly, I know it's going to cost a lot, but don't be afraid to ask me, because I may do it,
Yeah.
And I think the more you can do that, the more opportunities come about.
And now, just over the past couple weeks, there have been a lot of stars across the NFL that seem like they've become available. And it's quite possible that the Eagles could have a significant amount of interest in all of them. Now, the first guy I want to talk about is Budda Baker, the star safety from the Arizona Cardinals, as just last week he ended up requesting a trade from the Cardinals. Adam Schefter said this, quote, "Cardinals Pro Bowl safety Budda Baker has requested that Arizona trade him, per source." And it seems like Budda Baker could want to be traded for multiple reasons. Number one, because the Cardinals are in a rebuild mode, and obviously Budda Baker is a guy who, he's been in the NFL for a while now and he hasn't experienced much success, so I'm sure he would like to be in a situation sometime soon where he can compete for championships. And he also wants to be paid as one of the higher paid safeties in the league, if not the highest paid. NFL insider Jeremy Fowler was on SportsCenter and he said this is a player, I'm told, who wants to win. He's in a situation in Arizona where they're clearly rebuilding and not going to be very good this year, and he's got 2 years left left at non-guaranteed money on his original contract that he signed with the team about 3 years ago. So that has to give. This is an elite player, $27 million, around 2 years, so he would like that reworked, either with a stronger guarantee structure or something that makes him the highest paid or among the highest paid safety in the league. So it appears right now the Cardinals are not willing to do that. I mean, this is obviously very interesting. Budda Baker definitely deserves to be one of the highest paid safeties in the league. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler in his 6 seasons, and he's a 2-time first-team All-Pro. And he's got a great skill set as well. He's a very physical safety. He's got an aggressive play style. He can play the run. He can drop back into coverage and defend the pass. All around, he's just one of the best safeties in the game. And Jeremy Fowler also said in the same appearance on SportsCenter that he views the Eagles as a potential landing spot for Budda Baker, as he said, quote, "People I've talked to around the league are at least looking to Philadelphia because they have a need at safety with CJ Gardner-Johnson leaving in free agency. But my understanding is that they don't have a lot of money to spend because they signed other players, so it could be tough." And really, everything Fowler says here makes a lot of sense. Now sure, the Eagles could definitely have some interest because they do have a need at the safety position, and Budda Baker, like I said, is one of the best in the game, no doubt, and Howie Roseman is always going to be in on a star player that could help improve the Eagles' overall roster. And like Fowler said, Budda Baker also wants to win, and Philadelphia would give him the opportunity to do just that. And it seems like Budda Baker could be pretty open to playing for the Eagles, as well as there's this clip that's kind of starting to resurface as of now with the trade rumors surrounding him, where he was talking to Kay Adams before the Super Bowl, and he had some interesting comments about Nick Sirianni.
Something that I really like is that Eagles coach. He's who he is.
Nick Sirianni.
Exactly. So just seeing that is definitely special as a player.
Now, this was obviously before he requested the trade, but obviously, you know, like he said, he likes Nick Sirianni. He likes what he's brought to the Eagles as a head coach, so I'm sure he would relish the opportunity to play for Sirianni and the Philadelphia Eagles. But all that being said, like Fowler expressed earlier, it would be really hard for the Eagles to pay him. I mean, he's due over $13 million in the 2023 NFL season, and like Budda Baker said, he wants to be made one of the highest paid safeties in the league. He wants to be paid even more than that. And it definitely would not be easy for the Eagles to make this happen. Now, if he's willing to take a little bit less money and not be one of the highest paid safeties in the league to come to Philadelphia and try and win a championship this season, then I think it becomes a lot more realistic of a possibility, but we don't know if that's actually going to happen. And you still got to take into account what the trade compensation would be looking like. I have absolutely no idea what the Cardinals would want in a Budda Baker trade, but that's definitely something you do have to think about. So overall, I don't see this being a super realistic possibility because of the money and what they would end up having to pay him. Now, a couple days ago, I saw this being virtually impossible. I didn't think there was any sort of real possibility that Budda Baker could be traded to the Eagles, but now that the Hurts contract extension has happened and we've seen that his cap hit for not only 2023 but also 2024 are very, very low, I think it's definitely a little bit more of a realistic possibility that this trade could happen. I think it just depends on what the trade compensation would look like and how much Budda Baker actually wants to be paid, because if he wants to be paid like $20+ million per season, then I don't think it's that realistic. But if he's willing to take a little bit less than that and the Eagles can structure the contract in a beneficial way, then I think it's a little bit more of a realistic possibility. Now still, I want to clarify, I don't think that this is something that's definitely going to happen or anything like that, and I still don't see it being a super realistic thing that could happen, but I definitely think it's something to keep your eye on moving forward, and if it did happen, I wouldn't be super shocked. Now, the next guy I want to talk about is Dalvin Cook, the running back from the Minnesota Vikings, as it's being reported that he could be cut by the Vikings this offseason in order to save cap space. Dov Kleiman says this, quote, "Update, Vikings could cut Pro Bowl running back Dalvin Cook by draft time per @Jeremy Fowler ESPN. Fowler said, I'm told all options are on the table and he could be released if things don't work out. The Vikings also already talked to at least one team about a trade in the past." Now, like I said, the reason the Vikings could be open to cutting Cook is because of his cap hit and the salary cap situation they're in. Pro Football Talk says this, quote, "Dalvin Cook's $10.4 million salary continues to be an issue for the Vikings with a trade or a release still on the table." So it definitely seems like Dalvin Cook is going to be on the move this offseason. Now, I don't think it's going to be through a trade because the Vikings are openly saying that if they can't find a trade partner, they're going to cut him. So why would any team actually go out and try to make a trade for him? That doesn't make any sense, but he's definitely going to have a lot of suitors on the free agent market because Cook is a great player, obviously. He's been one of the better backs in the league ever since he was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings back in 2017. So, could the Philadelphia Eagles actually be a team that's interested in acquiring Cook? The Eagles do have a potential need at running back with Miles Sanders leaving in free agency this offseason, and Cook would be a great fit behind that Eagles offensive line. He's just a really good all-around running back, and he's still very productive. However, there's no report that I've seen, at least up to this point, linking Dalvin Cook to the Eagles, so this is all really just speculation. But it seems like some Eagles fans and the Philly media media would actually love this move. Howard Eskin says this, quote, "There's another running back that is likely to be available for the Eagles, so maybe people at Sports Radio WIP can stop the nonsense that Bird should take running back Bijan Robinson with the 10th pick in the draft. Per at ESPN, Vikings likely will cut running back Dalvin Cook. He would be perfect for the Eagles." Now, I gotta say, Howard Eskin, I respect you, but I don't really understand this at all. Now, like I said, I like Dalvin Cook, and I think he's still a very good player, but the thing about Dalvin Cook is I think he's going to command a little bit more money than what the Eagles are willing to pay for a running back. Otherwise, I think you would have seen them re-sign Miles Sanders, which obviously they didn't do, and Dalvin Cook has also been in the league for a decent amount of time. He's got a lot of mileage on him, and I think you'll start to see him decline steadily over the next couple years. And I actually think going out and drafting a running back in the first round is not only a much more realistic possibility, but also a better option, because not only would you be getting a guy like, for example, a Bijan Robinson that doesn't have nearly as much mileage on him as Dalvin Cook does already, but his best years are still ahead of him, and you wouldn't have to pay him nearly as much money as you'd be paying Dalvin Cook, and you'd have him for 4 or 5 good seasons. So I definitely think that's the better option, and I don't think the Eagles getting Dalvin Cook is actually a very realistic possibility. And now the next guy I want to talk about is someone who I've talked about multiple other times on this channel, and that is Devin White, but there's some new information out there that I haven't got to cover yet, so let's get into this. So obviously we know Devin White requested a trade from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers not too long ago, saying, quote, he was fed up with the organization, and we don't really know why this is. It could be because the Buccaneers are headed for a rebuild. It could be because the Bucs didn't want to extend him and pay him the money he thinks he's worth, but it could be any number of things. Who knows? It could be something else, but ultimately it ended up in him requesting a trade. And even before he requested the trade, it always has seemed like Devin White might have some interest in joining the Eagles. He obviously had commented on Greedy Williams' Instagram post when he had signed his contract with Philadelphia, saying let's make it happen, and there was a lot of speculation that resulted from this. He also followed a bunch of the Philadelphia Eagles players on Instagram, and he retweeted a picture of him in an Eagles jersey saying, quote, green's my favorite color. So I definitely think that that's something that we've kept our eye on as the days and weeks have gone on. And I always kind of thought that a Devin White trade was a little bit unrealistic because of the amount of money Devin White was expected to be paid once he got his new contract extension at around $20 million plus per season. And I also thought that, giving him that plus giving up whatever the Eagles would have to give up to get him in a trade makes this pretty unrealistic, and I just didn't see it happening. But now we have a new report refuting that, and it actually seems like a Devin White trade might be a realistic possibility for the Eagles, as the NFL Notifications put out a tweet. Now, NFL Notifications is an interesting source, and I've talked about them before. Maybe you don't think they're the most reliable, but they have been right about plenty of different things in the past, so I definitely think you have to take anything they say with a little bit of seriousness. And they put out this tweet saying, quote, trade rumor, Eagles have interest in Bucs linebacker Devin White, who recently requested a trade. They will see if they can get a linebacker in second or third rounds of this year's draft, then plan to initiate a course of action to pursue White, depending on how their board falls. So assuming this is true, this is obviously super interesting. It kind of reveals the Eagles' thought process, first of all, moving into the draft regarding the linebacker position. As it says, they might try to get a linebacker in the second or third round, and if they don't like any of the guys that are there at that point, they might actually go out and try to make a trade for Devin White. And this also could reveal what potential trade compensation could look like for Devin White, because if they're initiating a plan to trade for him after they've already struck out on linebackers in the second and third round, that obviously shows that they're not going to be giving up a super high draft pick in this year's draft to trade for him. So that's definitely interesting and something to think about, but this tweet just overall confirms the Eagles' interest in Devin White if it is true. And I think, like I've said before, adding Devin White to the Eagles could be a great fit. He fills a potential weaker position on the Eagles roster at linebacker, and he's obviously one of the better linebackers in the league, and he's got an aggressive play style. He flies around to the ball. He's a good run defender. He's a really good pass rusher at the inside linebacker position. He could just overall be a great addition, but the potential problem with this move would be, would the Eagles actually go out and pay Devin White this big contract extension? Because typically the Eagles don't make linebacker that high of a priority, and they wouldn't pay a linebacker that much money, especially as much money as Devin White wants to make. I mean, $20 million plus per year is a lot of money. So overall, I'm not really sure how realistic this is. I think it's definitely a little bit more realistic now than it was, just a couple days ago before the Hurts extension and before this new report came out. But I definitely think it's something that could happen. Again, not saying it's super realistic, but it's definitely something to keep your eye on moving forward. And I think if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen on draft night. So things could get crazy really soon here. But what would you guys think about any of these potential acquisitions by the Philadelphia Eagles? Do you think they should go out and try to make a move to get any one of these guys? I'd love to hear it down in the comments below. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like like on it, and subscribe to this channel if you don't want to miss any other videos like it coming in the future. And if you want to watch another Eagles video, you can go watch this one right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.